I understand how you process legitimate criticism. I think you and I go to a lot of the same sources in a way to have built a framework to process valid criticism.
Definitely.
But I wonder how, in your position, and this goes back to like the guru thing, you process, because I think everybody deals with it. And the reason I'm interested in this is everybody, and it's one of the hardest things people have to deal with. Everybody deals with unfair criticism.
Oh, for sure.
With somebody across the office who starts a rumor or who doesn't, who suddenly decides, his wife's father actually golfs with the president. And and I think that when people can't fight, when people can't, it's an illegitimate critique, right? It drives people mad. Now you can say, well, I go to stoicism for it, but when people call you a con man, a fraud, the stuff that you get, because somebody decides that you say they could eat almonds, so every day they buy Blue Diamond, salted, roasted almonds, ignoring the part where you say almonds are a domino food and you can only eat 10 of them. And then they decide that you're a fraud and a guru.
Right.
How do you not want to go crazy all the time?
Well, I'd say the first thing is there are certainly times when I want to go crazy, and it's partially a side effect of my policies with this type of thing, which had to evolve over time, right? I remember the first time, you'll appreciate this, so my book comes out, 4-Hour Workweek, and I'm a fragile human being, right? I'm so worried and so anxious and so self-conscious. This is my baby. I really want to help people. It's finally come out. And I got my first 1-star review on Amazon, which was from a guy, I don't think he even read the book. And it was this long diatribe, all of this personal ad hominem attack. And I sat down and wrote this impassioned, sympathetic response. And I was like, "Dear Todd," or whatever, "I understand if you hadn't read blah, 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 and this and that, how you would feel this way. And let me da-da-da." I addressed all of his points. And I think his response was just like, "Yeah, go yourself." And I was like, "What? That's what I get as a compromise after all that effort?" Crocodile tears. And then I realized that's not a very effective way to deal with the situation. Particularly once, it became, once I had a stage where I could really become a target. And there are times when you want to go crazy. And whenever you have a lot of public exposure, I don't think it's Neil who said this. I think it was someone else who said, it might have been Neil, who said a third of the people are going to love it, a third of the people are going to hate it, and a third of the people aren't going to care, and it doesn't matter what you put out. That's always going to be the case. And one thing that I try to maintain in my head as a chorus, and this is a philosophical thing, but a very strategic philosophical thing, is it's not about the number of people who don't get it, it's about the number of people who do get it. And that's true for business, it's true for writing, it's true for just about anything.
Well, that's a Seth Godin thing. Find your own tribe.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then from a pragmatic standpoint, you don't want to respond to a lot of that stuff, especially the sort of the unsubstantiated nonsense. There are times when I'll respond, but it's very seldom. In a world where discoverability is dictated by Google, by responding to someone, and I have so many people, I cannot tell you, who will write articles, they'll write hateful articles in the hopes that I will respond and drive traffic, so they can then drive advertising dollars from whatever site they happen to be on, or bonuses or whatnot. So I have to bite my tongue and not respond to that, starve those things of oxygen, because if you feed the trolls, you just get more trolls.
Yeah, a while back somebody was writing some bad stuff on Twitter about my father. They were tweeting about my dad, who's a successful my dad's a successful businessman. He's been a successful businessman for a long time. And, came up from nothing and I couldn't love him more. And I saw these people only had very few followers, and they were copying me on these tweets, and I really wanted to respond.
Yeah.
And I realized if I responded, I would actually give them they had no platform. And if I responded, I would have gifted them with a platform. And so the only way to actually defend my dad was by not defending him.
Right. There are definitely different tactics. If we get into sort of the trench warfare of internet conversation, then there are many tactics as well. But I think that the best insurance against haters, and not all critics are haters, and I think that's something you and I would agree on.
100%.
It's very sort of popular at the moment to label all critics haters, and I think that's throwing out the baby with the bathwater. But the fact of the matter is, the internet gives every genius and every idiot a voice. So you get the good with the bad. And if you have an army of true believers who have benefited from or enjoyed your work, you really don't have to respond to much. They'll take care of it.
Yes, you can.
They'll sort of police the neighborhood for you. And that's why it's like, if anybody, and this sounds kind of creepy maybe, but it's like, I've millions of readers out there. So if someone, like the most minute type of thing you can imagine that I would never otherwise see, like for instance, there was this direct mail campaign going around, like physical mail in the Midwest, where someone was trying to sell this BizOp, make millions overnight opportunity, right? Like a multi-level marketing thing.
Sure.
And they had fabricated a quote from me and put it in their materials as an endorsement. But it wasn't online. It was print. And one of my readers happened to get it, scanned it, put it on Twitter, and was like, hey, just a heads up, like, by the way, FYI, this, that, and then also emailed my assistant. So it's like, I have eyes and ears, like, everywhere. So I don't, fortunately, I really think, like, there's a great commencement speech. I love it. I mean, I'm a huge fanboy of Neil Gaiman, no matter what. I mean, the guy's just a tremendous writer and so brilliant multifaceted. Writer, But he gave a commencement speech called it is referred to as the Make Good Art commencement speech.
I haven't read it. I have to go read it.
God, yeah, go watch the video.
I love George Saunders's. I don't know if you saw that one. Who's one of the maybe our greatest living writer, and he gave a great one about. I'll send you that. Cool. You send me that.
I will. Yeah, but the point being, he's like, wife ran away with the salsa dancer, make good art. Like cat exploded, make good art. Like whatever. Like business partner, fired your favorite 5 employees, like make good art. And I really feel like if you focus on your craft and you put out good work, like you want good SEO, put out good content. Like you want to handle criticism well, like put out good work so that you have an army of supporters who will defend you, and you don't have to lift a finger. And so, but how do you? That's all makes sense to me in terms of tactics. Like when you're talking about tactics, right? But the thing before strategy and tactics is objective. Right, sure. It's objective strategy, tactics. Sure. And if your objective is to keep growing, very often people say, when someone becomes famous, is like kind of the moment at which their growth arrests, because a variety of things want to keep them who they were at that moment. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, now your work is about growth in many ways. But I'm wondering about the emotional work that you do. So that's all the strategy and tactics have had. A strategy, I'm not going to deal with it myself. Tactics, my people, Yeah. But how do you sort of frame what your objective is in terms of being reactive versus proactive in those areas and keeping yourself kind of emotionally together through both the adoration and criticism that you get? Yeah, that's a big question. I'd say, first off, I'm not sure that my goal is to grow my brand or media property. Yeah, but I'm talking about your personal growth. Oh, okay. Well, I hate to sound like I'm a walking collection of fortune cookies or something, but I really have a handful of maxims that I try to keep in mind, like this, like the handful that I mentioned before. Another one that I think is really critical to remember is like, you're never as bad or as good as they say you are. And I think falling in love with the most over-the-top supporters is as dangerous as taking the most over-the-top detractors seriously. If you start believing that you walk on water, that's when the universe usually, head kicks you really hard, and deservedly so. And it's also when you get sloppy. So I really meditate literally on this a fair amount, and it's important not to take Oh, here's another thing that I do that's very micro, but when I have sort of what I believe is an outstanding case study of someone who used what I did and benefited from it and wrote about it or wrote to me about it, or an article that I think is not over the top, walk on water, ridiculous in its praise, but that points out things I could lose sight of when I'm being hit with tomatoes by the virtual hater crowd. I highlight those. I save those in the in my browser at the very top of sort of the navigation, so that if I'm just if I start to fall into the pit of despair, that I can click on those and just be like, it's fine. There are people who don't hate you. Not everyone thinks that you're the Antichrist or whatever, which I've literally been called, which astonishes me. But it's a whole separate story. So in terms of personal growth, I feel like one of the biggest challenges for people who get a lot of attention or have reached a point where they have a built-in fan base that will buy pretty much anything they put out, is keeping yourself hungry and keeping your feet to the fire so you don't get sloppy. And part of the way that I do that, and it might be self-defeating, I don't know, is I deliberately, again, this could seem very stupid, and it might end up being stupid, I avoid certain revenue opportunities that would allow me to mass market my stuff. Because I could take the 4-hour moniker, and I've had many opportunities, and license it out and do the equivalent of like the Idiot's Guide to fill in the blank, and print money with it. But it would, I think, by necessity, certainly require other people to do a lot of the writing, and the writing would not be the same. The product, I think, would suffer, even though it might reach more people. And by declining those types of opportunities, it's forced me to continue to focus, I think, on quality, not just quantity.